Why I won't come to your bonfire. My friend asked me one day in October, "Hey Jesse, do you want to come to a bonfire at my house tonight?" I had never been to a bonfire before and didn't have a ride to their house 2 miles away, but he insisted that his father could give me a ride. It was a very quiet drive, and he was acting a little shifty, but I didn't think anything of it. He had always been anxious and socially awkward. I didn't know his family well, but his father had never been much of a talker. "Is Mrs. Peterson going to be joining us? I heard she was." What I'd started to say was that she and Mr. Peterson were separated, and she was living in her mother's house, but based on the tension in Mr. Peterson's cheekbones, I cut my question short.
No. She's still at her mother's.
I was quiet the rest of the trip, not wanting to crush any more eggshells underfoot. The truck's brakes squeaked as it braked into the gravelly driveway. The house was just a few minutes away from the wilderness and deep pine forests of Oregon. Jacob led me to where the rest of his family was standing, to an enormous pile of firewood in the backyard. "Whoa, looks like it'll be a pretty big fire," I said anxiously. "How hot would this thing burn?"
They're always smaller than you think they'll be, but it'll do the job nicely.
He seemed in a better mood. Jacob's 2 older sisters began throwing gasoline onto the wood, drenching it with highly flammable fumes. My tension rose, and I stepped a few steps away from the pile. This was looking like the forest might catch fire with this enormous blaze. Jacob, his sisters, and father stood back as well, as Mr. Peterson lit a match. They all seemed strangely nervous and excited, but all I could feel was the tingling sensation of fear in my stomach and fingertips.
"I've been looking forward to this,"
said Mr. Peterson slowly. The match flew from his hand into the pile of wood. The pile erupted into an enormous fireball, a hungry, raging inferno devouring the offering of wood by these puny mortals. The heat was so intense I felt as if the skin on my face was shrinking onto my skull. Jacob asked me if I could sign off on a merit badge for him, fire starting or something, and he was very particular that I put the date and the time. "Well, Jesse, they can be pretty finicky at the office," he stuttered out. One of his sisters began throwing log after log onto the fire in a frenzy, cackling all the while, "Burn, burn, burn!" At the last exclamation, she tossed one of the containers of gas straight into the fire on the end closest to me.
"Nicole, no! No!"
Mr. Peterson yelled, but it was too late. The can exploded, sending a fireball in my direction. I fell backward as I tried to run away, arm shielding my face from the greedy tendrils of flame. I got up and could see the force of the explosion had thrown several logs out of the pile. The sight that I saw in that fire will haunt me till my dying day. I saw a face upside down in the blaze. The woman's hair was aflame and her eyes stared into my soul as her skin bubbled. It was Mrs. Peterson buried beneath the wood, dead. The Petersons rose from their curled up positions on the grass and looked towards me. They read the panic in my eyes and looked at the fire to see that horrifying sight.
"No, no, no, no!"
screamed Mr. Peterson. I thought he was mourning his wife until he looked up with tearful eyes towards me.
"You've seen too much, kid. You were supposed to bear witness that we were nowhere near that house fire."
He wasn't making any sense, but he was advancing on me, determined. Jacob and his sisters slowly moved to surround me.
"I'm sorry for what I'm going to have to do to you, kid. We can't let you leave."
My eyes shifted to all the faces in turn. They were all in on it. They told me all I needed to know. I hucked the remaining gas can at my feet, over my head and into the fire, and the fireball sent everyone cowering like the destructive outburst of an angry deity. I didn't flinch. I had to get out of here before they killed me, their failed alibi. I pushed Jacob over as he staggered and booked it to the forest. I had no flashlight, but I had a will to live. I could hear noises over the rushing of the wind and rustling of the underbrush behind me.
"I'm gonna kill you, you little snitch!"
It was pitch black now, but they didn't have flashlights either. Suddenly a light shone behind me. Phone flashlight. Its weak beam lit up a decent-sized river with steep banks on either side ahead of me. I ran haphazardly down the bank and into the river up to my knees. "Where is he, Dad?" I heard from 100 feet away, out of the sight of the bank.
"He's crossing the river! We gotta catch him before he gets to the road!"
I looked to my right and saw a corrugated metal tube of a culvert, large pipe where a river runs through, below the train track. I threw a large rock as far as I could in the direction the Petersons were running, and I heard,
"I've got you now!"
from only 20 feet away. I dove into the large metal tube and lay back into the cramped space. It was big enough I didn't have to crawl in, but could lay my back against the edge and hide. I pulled out my phone and began to dial 911 in the darkness. Splashes erupted in the river as Mr. Peterson crossed the river and kept running. Thank goodness I had thrown that rock. As I tensely waited in my hiding place, I heard the rest of the family cross the river and gunshots. 911, what's your emergency? Words dropped from my mouth like water. Peterson's, edge of big town, fire, they're chasing me and I need you to come help me. Slow down, sir. Jesse. Okay, Jesse, give it to me slow so I can send the police there. We'll also track the call and pinpoint your location while you talk.
"Jesse? Where did he go? Where?"
They were still searching for me and were still in the area. I gave the dispatcher the whole story in a panicked whisper, not wanting to be found. And after an agonizing half hour, I heard sirens and rustling leaves around my hiding place. "Drop the gun, now!" I heard an unfamiliar voice shout. "Jesse, come out, it's all right." I approached the house to see the whole family in custody, the fire put out. The paramedics on site immediately wrapped me in a blanket, which is when I noticed my shivering. I stared into the distance and spoke to the paramedic nearest me. They wanted to burn Mrs. Peterson's house and then plant her burnt remains in the house. The older man had no idea what I was talking about, but nodded silently to keep me talking. I was supposed to be their alibi. They had me sign some merit badge paper as evidence I was here at this time, and therefore, if they were suspected, they would have evidence they were here. I collapsed in sobs into the man's shoulder, and he seemed startled, but held me close as I processed it all, eyes squeezed closed. After several long minutes, I looked up to see the Petersons being pushed into police cars. Their eyes told me that I would pay someday. They were driven away. After the trial, I never saw the Peterson family again. My parents relocated to a different state for safety, or at least for peace of mind. I now live on my own, far away from that bonfire, from those woods, and from that family. I still look over my shoulder for familiar faces who wish me harm. I would tell you where I live, but you never know who may be reading. Better safe than sorry. Good night. Sleep well. I can't say I'll be sleeping tonight.